Gabriel felt good. Better than he had in years, as though he had been carrying a great weight, and while it wasn't gone, it had undoubtedly been reduced. He did not doubt that there was more work to do, but it was an excellent first step, and that was something. On the other hand, Nish was still reeling from what she had heard. Irila had hinted at something bad, but that was just awful. Pista, too, had been affected by the tale, and had been strangely quiet. Nish had been slightly concerned about Gabriel when he suggested they spend the day out. His usual response before the revelation would have been to spend the day by himself, recharging, as Gabriel put it. She took some comfort in that he had decided to keep it small, so it seemed Gabriel had not changed too much. Even though it was her day to decide, she had let Gabriel pick. Not that it had been easy. He had been quite insistent that she choose. Eventually she had worn him down, which is why they were having a picnic in the park. Kekul's Park, to be exact. A mix between carefully manicured country estate and nature reserve, slap bang in the middle of Reshu City. With an area of 10 kilometers and not overly popular with tourists, meaning they were left alone. Understandably, the severe injury of the once seemingly invincible man had been newsworthy, and Nish's heroic rescue had made her as much a household name as Gabriel had been. At least for the moment, Gabriel was of the opinion that their stars would fade eventually. Nish had enjoyed the recognition for a while. She had quickly come to understand the irritation Gabriel had felt. She was beginning to miss just being another face in the crowd. They had both sent in a statement about what had happened, and an official investigation was being conducted to determine the true cause. Something Gabriel and Nish were keen to discover. From what Gabriel could recall, the railing was not rusted and it seemed perfectly stable. Pista interrupted Gabriel's train of thought by offering a round, bread-like disc covered in a sweet preserve, and asking, "Do you want some?" Gabriel looked at the food, then at Pista, before returning his gaze to the not-quite bread. "Very funny, you little peshtuk," Gabriel said, using the word Nish had taught her, which roughly translated to monkey, or small, mischievous, arboreal animal. Pista chortled at her joke before stuffing the entire thing into her mouth. On the topic of food, Gabriel noticed that he was not hungry, and would not be until the evening. It seemed his time on Minigrad had taught his body to go long periods without solid food. Gabriel sighed and mumbled, "I'm going to get even fatter when I get back home." Now that he thought about it, Nish and Pista would be leaving in 5 days. That trip to the hospital had really eaten into their holiday. Looking at Nish, he still felt the same way he had days ago. Gabriel shook his head. It was a crush, nothing more. There was no reason to make things awkward, or maybe not, considering that romance was virtually alien to the Defender people. He supposed Nish would just shrug her shoulders and quickly forget about it, or whatever Tafanda did to show disinterest. He had not quite figured that one out yet. Gabriel was pretty sure it had something to do with the eyelids. Even more reason to ignore it. He would be sad to see both of them go, but it was for the best. Still, they should probably make the most of their time. "Just 5 more days. You should really think about where you want to go," he said, airing the topic. "I know, but that's the problem with you. When you tell me we can do just about anything, I can't think of anything," Nish replied. "There has to be something," stated Gabriel. Nish rested her head in her cybernetic arm and began to think. She had adapted very quickly and, more often than not, forgot she had lost her original arm at all. "You think of something too," Gabriel said to Pista, who was busy laying claim to all the cakes he had brought. "And learn to share," he added, reclaiming the foodstuffs. Pista did not need to think. "I want to go to Weno's Zero-G Funland." Gabriel paused. He had not heard of that one before. He looked at Nish, who explained, "It's a place we go to sometimes back on Yersu. She just means going to a Zero-G park. Any Zero-G park." That sounded good. Gabriel had been to one before Jeriel had been taken from him, and he had never been since. "Not a bad idea, actually. I need to get used to flying again now that I've got this arm," Nish said, rotating her wrist. "The weight's going to throw me off," she added, looking at Gabriel, assuming he did not instinctively understand why it would be a problem. She was right. "Zero-G Park it is," Gabriel said, looking for a suitable venue. "What are you going to do when you finally have all the time to yourself?" Nish asked, inching closer to him and looking at his PDA. Not an unprecedented move. She often gave her opinion on the places they visited. Her primary area of expertise was where Pista was least likely to make a scene. Though from what Gabriel had seen of the girl, she was remarkably well behaved. Not Jeriel well behaved, but he had known worse. If one ignored the act of stubbornness that had led into the Vertora enclosure, Nish had also noted that she was more careful and reasonable than before. Nish had a gnawing pit in her stomach that told her the moment Gabriel was gone and they were back on the transport, her personality would shift right back. Then again, perhaps she was not giving her daughter enough credit. Gabriel had managed to book a spot the same day, and he was currently chasing Pistra around the large cylindrical chamber. It was an impressive place to be, stretching 200 meters into the air and 36 meters in diameter. Launching himself with all his might, Gabriel made a beeline for Pistra. It was pointless, however. Despite his physical strength and stamina, Pistra easily moved out of the way, trilling all the while. No matter how hard he tried, it made no difference. Pistra was simply too skilled and had far more practice than him. "Having trouble?" Nish asked, flying around Gabriel with superb grace. "I'd be lying if I said I wasn't," Gabriel replied, as Pistra darted back and forth just out of reach. "Any advice?" he asked. "You'll never catch her by yourself. Even I would struggle. Kids tend to be much more nimble than adults," Nish explained. "But you have an idea?" Gabriel stated. "'Tis, yes," Nish replied, with a trill of her own. Gabriel and Mummy had been hanging from the wall, talking to one another for some time, and Pistra did not like it. Not only because it meant no one was paying attention to her, but also because she vaguely recalls something like this happening at Wenno's. Suddenly, Gabriel and Mummy looked at her, and the old memory came flooding back. They were planning to gang up on her just like Mummy, Auntie Maybay, and Warutteri had done. Pistra turned and attempted to flee, but Gabriel shot off like a rocket at her, far faster than before. Despite the added effort, Pistra was still too quick for him, and he went sailing past her into the padded wall. Gabriel had just been a distraction, and Nish was already on her. Pistra's heart began pounding in her chest as she narrowly avoided being snatched by her mother, as she darted upward. Once again, Gabriel came rocketing past. He had misjudged his leap and overshot Pistra. That did not stop her from squeaking and turning on a hairpin towards the opposite wall. Gabriel braced himself and collided with the wall, grabbing hold of the straps to regain control. He landed next to a pair of Nimuteru, a quadrupedal people with large tusks, though one of the Nimuteru only had tiny nubs. That and their smaller size and mottled brown skin showed they were a child. "Hey," Gabriel said, panting slightly from the effort. "Hello," the young Nimuteru replied meekly. Gabriel's focus returned to finding Pistra, which was not as difficult as you would expect. Her wings, though far less impressive than Nish's, were still large enough to make her an obvious target. Pistra once again dodged her mother. She was getting cocky now, making figure-of-8 patterns and telling Nish that they would never catch her. Gabriel lined up as Nish distracted her daughter, and then launched himself at her. Thinking he had finally got her, Gabriel had not put nearly as much effort into his leap, worried that if he hit Pistra at full pelt he might hurt her. While thoughtful, this gave Pistra just enough time to realize what Nish was doing, and with one glance behind her she immediately got out of the way. Nish did not ignore the opening this left, and with one incredible beat of her wing she was on Pistra, and this time there was no escape. Grabbing hold of her daughter, then they began to tumble in the air. Pistra tried to escape, but it was pointless. Nish's grip was like iron. "Got her," Nish called. It took a little searching for Nish to spot Gabriel. His suit allowed him to blend in well with the walls. Eventually Nish found him and added, "She can't escape now." Gabriel jumped towards the pair, far more leisurely this time, and collided with them, pulling them both in for a hug. Gabriel worried he might be overdoing it, but both Nish and Pistra hugged him back. He felt much better.